What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Real Estate Served on the Rocks, powered by Living in Colorado, the Mile High Perspective on YouTube. Check us out if you guys haven't. I swear to God, we've got some good stuff on there. And we're doing things a little bit differently today. Normally, Charlie has his voice. It has gotten stolen from him. So we're going to find out who did that. But as
it was
always,
that one chick from The Little Mermaid.
it might have been, yeah. It's a little pearl.
Yeah.
So we'll do the intros a little bit differently. But today I am with
Charlie Sardelli.
Oscar Ibarra.
And Jameson Honoros.
If you guys didn't hear that, that is Charlie Sardelli over here to my right. And we got a good episode today, guys. It's going to be kind of a chill one, I think. Mm-hmm. Every once in a while, we like to go and kind of rip some headlines from the news and just kind of talk about what our opinions are because, you know, my personal thing is if somebody can write a news article about an opinion, I can have an opinion on his opinion.
Absolutely.
Or her opinion.
And we talked about this. We were coming back from Monument. I said, you can hedge your argument on whatever point you want to you want to make.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
take one point, you don't like it, spin it off and promote it.
Yep. So I think we're going to pull 2 or 3 headlines, talk about it today, give you guys our opinion and hopefully some insight. We're coming into 2024. We all think that this year is going to be a lot different than what we saw last year. What extent of that difference we have yet to see. But a lot of news has come out, whether it's interest rates, whether it's inventory levels, whether it's a good time to buy a home, a bad time to buy a home. There's an article on here that said, you know, should you buy new construction? Gen Zs are coming for baby boomers' houses as they die off over the next 30 years. So some interesting stuff. So we're going to talk about it.
30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is
Yeah.
that pretty accurate?
Oh, I got it. Yeah, 30 years, right? They're 60s and they're 90s.
The early boomers?
Yeah. Like I think it's like 1950
What's
to
the
1960.
cutoff for boomers?
I think it's the 50s, right?
But like the
40s?
The youngest ones, 60?
Oh, 60s.
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
65?
65, I think.
65.
Yeah, so the younger boomers at 65, maybe
Oh,
95 in 30 years. You
Because
know
then
what
it's
I mean?
like 65 to what?
Yeah,
70?
they're calling it's called the silver tsunami, if you guys want to get super
The
technical.
silver
It sounds like a
tsunami.
WWE wrestler.
Yeah, right? In the red corner, the silver tsunami. Hey. Crowd goes wild.
It's like the Crimson Tide.
And I believe today we are, as you guys know, we're 3 Denver-based realtors for Fathom Realty here in Colorado. We service the entire Front Range. So if you guys ever have any questions on anything from Colorado Springs all the way up to Fort Collins, west out to Alma, Colorado, Hugo,
Bailey to Hugo.
let us know. We'd love to help. And we like to come on here and just kind of give you guys our riffs and opinions on different things, all things real estate, to educate you guys. And the goal, as always, is to make sure that anybody that's looking to get into the real estate journey in any capacity, buying, selling, investing, is armed with the best possible knowledge that we can give you, so that when you guys are making those decisions, you can make them in full faith that you've done your due diligence, and hopefully we're there to help. And we always do it drinking some bourbon.
Absolutely. And also, we're not too proud to say if we don't know the answer, we'll get it for you.
Yep.
It'll be few and far between. But if we don't, we'll definitely get you the best advice that we'll call other agents and or research it.
Oh, yeah. Talk to other experts, title companies, lenders,
Yeah, we have a
mortgage
plethora
brokers.
of connections.
Yep. So today, Oscar, what are we drinking, man?
We are drinking Wild Turkey Rare Breed. It looked cool. I'm not going to lie. I have zero information on it. I do know Wild Turkey. I gave a bottle to a client of mine, but it was Wild Turkey Royal Bird or something like that.
Uh-huh.
It was their high end. It wasn't cheap, but it was really good. I was surprised. I bought it just because it had a great display, and it was during Thanksgiving. So it was kind of a play on that. I was impressed because, as most of you know, Wild Turkey is not known for having the best bourbon or whiskey or whatever. It has a pretty bad rap. But after tasting that one, I was like, okay, they have potential to have great stuff. I saw this one. I've not purchased a whole lot of Wild Turkey in my time. So I'm hoping this is good. It's 105 proof, and it should be one of their better bottles.
I actually think this is 116 proof.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah,
I was
this
in
is
a
their-
rush getting here this morning. And
Yeah, I was going to say, this is their barrel proof, right?
Yeah. Their cast strength. And this is going to be like a redemption story for Wild Turkey with us, because the was a Long Branch.
It was Long Branch.
Yeah.
You know what? But with that said, I wasn't here for that one. But I'm a huge fan of Matthew McConaughey. So if he says go, I'm going to go.
Well,
He's
we
just that
went.
guy.
We went, and I'll tell you,
It wasn't good.
hopefully the tequila brand that he just launched is better than the Long Branch
See,
partnership.
and that's where I draw the line. I'm not a tequila guy. I'll drink it. I mean, hell, give me a few bourbons or beers, and then hand me some tequila.
See, I
I'm a
love
tequila drinker.
I love it.
So I like good tequila, right? The sipping kind.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're just gonna throw back shots, or I like margaritas and palomas. I love palomas. Those are my favorite. If I'm going tequila, paloma's good, which is grapefruit juice, tequila,
Grapefruit soda.
some lime, and some
Soda.
salt. That's good stuff.
Speaking of, Los Dos Portillos just opened in Castle Rock. Went there yesterday. You guys haven't checked it out? You're in the area? Fantastic.
I'm excited.
They have their own cerveceria. So
Really?
they brew their own beer on site.
Damn, that's cool. We used to go to the one in Littleton.
That was Littleton. Yeah, Littleton was the old school one.
Yeah, and
Yep.
we used to go Sundays, bottomless mimosas. Mm-hmm. They didn't use the best champagne, but it was a fun time. And they have that ooey gooey Mexican food too.
Oh, yeah.
It's
It's good,
the
dude.
cheesy, saucy stuff when you're hungover.
I had
my God, that hits
barbacoa
spot.
enchiladas smothered in green chili.
Oh yeah. I mean, if
Money.
you're going for like, oh my God, authentic and being snooty, whatever. But they're just good. I like them for what they are, and I have history with them for the Littleton one.
Yeah, check it out. It's good. Two things about this wild breed that make it unique. Number one, all of these are aged at least 5 years, minimum.
Weren't their blends like 5 to 8, and then 12?
Yep.
Up to 12 years.
Yep, and I think that was the one that you had, the Wild Turkey Royal. The other thing is, and I've never heard this term before, but there's 4 levels of char on American oak barrels, 1, 2, 3, and 4. They will only use number 4, which is the deepest char, also called the alligator char, which is why the amber color on this is significantly darker than a lot of the whiskeys and bourbons that we've tasted.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So it's charred so much that it looks like alligator scales.
Alligator char.
Yeah.
Nice.
Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
So I'm excited.
Okay.
I mean, 115 proof.
I mean, we've been running.
That's
with
back to back because we had
was
the 115
3 in
last.
a row.
Yep.
3 in a
Yep.
row.
Yeah, and if you're going to have me pick one, I'm probably going to go with the higher end just because I like, again, I was talking to the guy at Bubbles this weekend when I picked up that Dexter for my buddy, that the burn is part of my flavor profile now. I enjoy it. I mean, not the, oh my God, it's ethanol, but, a good burn goes with a well-balanced bourbon.
Well, and I was telling Jameson that I had over the weekend, I actually had some Johnny Walker Blue Label,
Oh, I love that stuff.
and the smokiness I've not had a bourbon yet that touches that. But again, it's a Scotch whiskey, and I will say that for my palate, it was confirmed. I'm bourbon.
I ain't
Bourbon-
fucking with Scotch, bro.
Bourbon
And
whiskey,
you know what?
not Scotch whiskey.
I don't. My buddy Ian, he's Scottish. He told me how to pronounce it, but Belvini, or Belgini. I don't know how you pronounce it, but it's that's why your go-to start Scotch because the peat is way down. It's super smooth, 80 proof. But if you didn't like, because Blue Label is smooth. I mean, Blue Label is like, oh my God. It makes a lot of that other crap. Obviously, there's
It's also a
difference.
$200 bottle.
Right, and you have your Scotch drinkers that want that peat, like the Macallan, some Glenfiddich, Glen Moraine, whatever.
Glenlivet.
Yeah, and whatever the case may be, but yeah, if you really want to know whether you're a bourbon drinker or not, drink some Scotch and you're like, oh, I love you, bourbon. I'm sorry.
Yep.
I'm coming back.
The taste of this also makes. Sorry, I cheated.
Oh, okay.
We had a neck pour. All right, so I'm not disappointed, but
I want to smell it.
this makes way more sense. So, because I read the names, it's like, wait a second, Oscar, what's one of your favorite bourbons that you've
Elijah Craig.
had? That's a 10-year. We've talked about it before.
McKenna.
Russell.
Oh yeah, Russell. Yeah,
Right.
Russell's a good one.
So the master distillers for Russell are. Oh my God, where did you go? Hold, please. Jimmy Russell and Eddie Russell. Those are the master distillers. They've been with Russell. That's their family for years and years and years. They're also the master distillers of Wild Turkey.
No way.
Yep.
So is it like Russell's?
It's an offshoot of Russell.
So is Russell like the Infinity?
I
brand?
don't know. That's what I was trying to figure out.
And then Wild Turkey's like the Nissan?
That's what I was trying to figure out. I think they just have two different I just don't know. I would assume that Russell is the Lexus to Wild
To the
Turkey's
Toyota.
Toyota. But
Well, that's what I said. Infiniti and Nissan.
sorry, yeah, or
That's what
Porsche
I
to
thought.
Volkswagen, whatever. But yeah, it's interesting. But it's
Wow.
2 separate distilleries, which is also weird.
So they just got 2 different jobs.
Yeah.
And 2 different products because that Russell's really good.
Well, actually, hold on.
but this is I had the neck pour wasn't enough to give me
What?
Okay,
an
no,
opinion.
got it. Here it is. They run the Wild Turkey distillery, and they distill Russell from Wild Turkey.
Huh.
Yep.
It would make
So
sense.
Wild
though,
Turkey
'cause
Russell's Reserve debuts a 10-year-old Kentucky straight bourbon in 2001, bottled at 101 proof for the first 10-year
Well, I was
Russell.
gonna say though, it makes sense because Wild Turkey is
Yeah.
one of the OGs.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yep.
that does make sense.
I mean, when you think bourbon and whiskeys, Wild Turkey's up there. Jim Beam, Jack Daniels, all those guys.
Four
They're
Roses.
they've been there. Four Roses.
Yeah.
Wild Turkey's up there. Again, they get a bad rap because Wild Turkey does have that cheap stuff. You know.
Yeah, so I think it looks like the Russell is more of the experimental small batch line of Wild Turkey, and Wild Turkey's got their heavy hitters that they've been distilling since 2015.
And again, the cheap stuff. When I say the cheap stuff, I mean if I go somewhere and I don't like overpaying for pours of bourbon. I just don't.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
bottles of bourbon. But if I go somewhere and like, I don't know, and Elijah Craig is like $20 a pour, no. If they have Jim Beam, I'll take some Jim. Jim is good. It's cheap, but it's good stuff. It's not like, McCormick out of the plastic bottle vodka. It's not that cheap. It's just, it's a tried and true. They do what they do, and you know what you're going to get. I just can't stand, and I get it. You have overhead, but when you're charging that much, good Lord.
How are you guys doing on the nose for this?
Yeah,
I'm
it's
just
some-
curious.
I mean,
Yes.
the burn's definitely there.
Yeah,
The burn's there, but it's also sweet.
I was gonna say
It's very sweet.
once you get past the burn, surprisingly sweet for 116 plus the number 4 char.
Yep.
That's wild.
And it has a floral nose to
Well,
it.
we know though that the longer that bourbon interacts with wood, it pulls those sugars into the.
You would think it would be a
Into
little
the
bitter
bourbon.
because
Yeah.
of the alligator char. I would think it was charcoal, more charcoal, earthy, and we'll see what it tastes like. But
Definitely getting that caramel vanilla
very floral.
sweetness.
Yeah. So this is this specific bottle. It's a mix of a 6, 8, and 12-year aged blend in a
Nice.
single barrel.
so
Yep.
I'm getting like a floral, like a vanilla bean flower ish.
I'm getting a little bit of like rose.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yep.
but like a
I-
not like a long stem rose, but
No.
those bush roses
Yeah,
that
yeah.
have the petals, the
Yeah, I
little
was gonna
petals.
say it's more like a rose petal.
Yeah.
I was saying,
Yeah.
yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm interested to see like how. I think this is gonna be one where the flavor is completely different from the nose.
All right, so what do you guys got for aromas? I heard
good.
rose petal.
Rose petal, caramel,
Yep.
Some vanilla.
some vanilla. I'm not getting a lot of spices.
Okay.
Not getting a lot of spice.
I'm getting a lot of floral, caramel, vanilla.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So
Orange.
the nose should be spring flowers.
There you go.
So dead on
Nice.
with the rose. A touch of black pepper. So it's not built to be spice
Spicy.
forward. And then almonds, which that can kind of go towards that vanilla,
Yeah.
nutty kind of scent, mixed with layers of honey and dates.
Okay. Dates is probably
I
where
can see the
where-
dates where the sweetness is coming
Yep.
from, for sure.
Honey dates, yeah.
All right,
Spot
well,
on.
cheers, boys.
All right. Cheers. It's gonna be a fun one. I haven't had any breakfast, and Charlie can't talk. Oh wow, has a very dry feel in the mouth. There's a lot of burn. Or at least a drink that I guess the pepper. A little more bitter than
It's funny that the
The-
spice comes forward on the tongue
I was
way
thinking
more
way
than on the
more.
nose.
yeah,
It's like
and it's
punching.
like on the sides of my tongue. You know, it's a lot more peppery than the nose. A
Yeah.
lot more. It took me by surprise. I took
Yeah.
a big old sip of it, and
I
it's
get a
just-
lot more of the char,
and
too.
it's just lingering. It's not even going down. It's just lingering. The burn's definitely there. It's 115 proof for sure, 16, whatever it is. Wow.
I mean, that char, 100%. Like right at the front, spice, char, wood. Then it goes into that, like a little bit more of the floral. It's almost like I don't want to say stale, but like even. It's not very acidic.
Right.
No,
But it very.
it's kind of neutral.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now that
Neutral.
I took a more
Yep.
normal drink, I took a pretty big chug the first one, and it blasted me. This one, I could taste the vanilla, the
Yeah.
sweeter on the tip of my tongue. It lingered a little. It was a lot more. The sweet was in the front, but still bitter. It's very bitter, and the bitter lingers.
Yeah, that spice stays.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like in my cheeks. It's weird.
This is interesting because I feel like with a lot of other 115 proofs, like the last three, it was the sweetness that sat. Like the aftertaste was the sweetness. I'm getting way more of that floral on the back end.
Yep.
Little bit of sweetness there, but not what I was expecting on the back end.
I think this is more of a, this is something, obviously I didn't know, I could only assume if like someone's grandfather is going to pick up something
Yeah.
good. This is more of a old man. I've had bourbon my whole life, but I want something, I'm going to treat myself kind of bourbon.
I feel like this is right up your wheelhouse, though.
Yeah, I like it. That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. It's I'm going to grab a bottle of rare breed and go chew the fat on someone's porch.
Yeah.
That's what I feel like this
Yeah.
this paints a picture of for me.
I mean, interesting bottle.
Yeah, it kind of sat me down and put me in timeout.
Yeah.
Not going to lie.
I was gonna say this is the most, it makes sense with the number 4, but like, this is the most wood, like burnt wood that I've gotten.
Yeah, this is a hair on your chest bourbon.
In a good way.
Yes.
I mean, it's definitely not like, oh, gross.
No.
It's good, but
Honestly, like,
you got to be a man to drink
I'd
this.
be interested to see.
Well, or a
what
woman
this-
that really likes bourbon. Sorry,
I'd be interested to see what this was like not in a Glencairn.
Yeah.
I feel like
Oh, and I
more-
didn't bring my thing.
that more like flat, open surface area, I feel like would completely change.
Yep.
Yeah, I
nose.
think this is a definitely just a regular rocks glass
Yep.
kind of bourbon.
Like a highball.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Not this isn't a, Glencairn. Let's get fancy. This is a rocks glass highball kind of bourbon.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well,
Interesting.
I mean, I think it's perfect that Oscar, you brought up that this is an old man's bourbon.
Is
Maybe
there,
maybe an old man that was born between, I don't know, like 1940 and 1965. Did that?
I think
that track?
Yep, I think so.
It's a great segue. So thank you. It was
I do what I can.
brilliance. This chef's kiss. First article. I'm just gonna give you the headlines first, then we can talk about it. Is move over millennials, Gen Zers are coming for baby boomers' houses, and the premise of the article is essentially saying that we're seeing this gap, right? And we talk all the time about affordability and how affordability is driven by inventory, and how currently baby boomers own almost $15 trillion worth of real estate, which is double what millennials own and way more than the $5 trillion that Gen Zers own currently, right? And to break it down, right, millennials are, I think, 1981 or 1979 to 1992
I think it's like 1980.
or something like that.
No, 95.
95.
Because I'm right there.
And then Gen
93.
Zers, you're looking at 95 towards now 2024, right? And then baby boomers are 1940s all the way up to the 1960s-ish, okay? And right now, the big argument is that there's not a lot of homes available because 90% of homeowners refied back 2 years ago. Of those 95%, a majority of them are baby boomers that are essentially aging in place, and they don't really have a desire to move. So people are wondering, well, where are the houses coming from? Well, this sets up an interesting argument because essentially it says that over the next 20 to 30 years, you're going to have the baby boomers, and I apologize, but this is just what the article says, either die off or move into granny flats, nursing homes, assisted living as they age from their current ages of, 50, 65 to 75, 85, okay? But in 30 years, 20 years, millennials are going to be past their prime home buying age, whereas Gen Zers are going to start approaching or be in the middle of prime home buying. So what they're saying, the article is saying, is the millennials might actually skip a generation. And you're going to see this flood of housing hit the market for the Gen Zers versus the millennials.
Wait, what generation is between millennials and boomers?
Gen Z and Gen X.
Gen X is
Gen
between
X.
boomers and millennials.
Where the hell are Gen Xers?
I mean, Gen Xers are in the same boat we are, but they own more homes.
But they've never been talked about.
Not really. I'm technically a Gen X, I think, if you break it down.
Yeah.
At 19, born, like I think the ages of like 32 and 38 are Gen X. I'd have to look it up. I feel like it changes all the time.
Yeah,
But-
I don't know what I am at this point.
But the point is, they're saying
Definitely
that
not a
essentially,
boomer.
if you're a Gen Zer, so if you're, the ages of 17 to 20, 25 roughly, in 10, 15 years, you're actually going to be potentially in prime position
Or
to scoop up housing because
Gen X and millennials are the heirs of those properties.
Yeah.
correct, and that's right. That could
Well,
also be
and
a
then
possibility.
The other thing that is interesting to me is we've seen such a boom in at-home care,
Yes.
right? And we have the boomers who are sitting on tons of equity. So my question is, will the boomers hire in-home care to then die in the homes that they're in versus selling it or giving it away and going into those homes?
And if you're listening, boomers, I have the perfect plan for that. It's called a reverse mortgage.
Yeah,
Yep.
we were just talking about that before the podcast. So real quick, let's just define this. So Gen X, 1965 to 1980 is when they were born. Millennials, 1980 to 1995.
Okay, I think I know why we don't hear about the Gen X's as much. They're the hippie generation.
Yes.
That's what they're known as.
Yes.
Yeah.
So my parents are on the cusp. My parents are technically baby boomers because they were born in 1960, right? But 1965 would be Gen X. And they are sometimes looped into the baby boom as far as the housing market stats go because they were buying
Wait,
houses.
time out.
Go ahead.
No. They're not the hippies. They're the children of the hippies.
If it
Yes.
No.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
because
you're
the
right,
hippies
you're
were
right.
the 60s.
Yeah.
They were the 60s. They had their children, which
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gen Xers
Yeah, yeah,
are
yeah.
their children.
Yeah, you're right.
And
Yeah.
I think they're kind of, I don't know, they're kind of fucked up.
Yeah.
'cause
So
their
let's-
parents were- they were hippies, and now that's what we don't talk about them because they'll cut you.
So let's define this, right? So baby boomers, anybody born between 1946 and 1964. Generation X, 1965 to 1980. Millennials or Gen Y. I don't know why we have two names.
Y2K?
Yeah, 1981 to 96. Zoomers, so the opposite of boomers because they move faster because they're not decrepit. I don't know.
Yeah, we're
or
just-
Generation Z is 1997 to 2012. And then Generation TikTok
Yeah, that's
slash
it.
generation
They're calling it
Generation Alpha is 2010 to the mid 2020s. So essentially what we're saying is Gen Z and Gen Alpha in this next 20 years are going to see baby boomers age out of their homes and potentially have way more options than the current millennials and Gen Zs have now as far as available housing.
It's going to be so cool to see, like, because again, millennials don't have the opportunity.
Right.
So it's going to be really cool to see, like, will the boomers leave it to their kids?
Right.
And will those kids take it? Or will they go, haha, give me my money?
Well, I think two things. If they do age in place and stay home, if they do reverse mortgages, I think they'll end up selling it off.
Yeah.
Either way, where there's tons of, or because no one wants to inherit a bunch of debt, right? So if there's a bunch of debt tied to it, sell it. Let's pay.
Well,
for
and it
what-
depends though, right?
this-
Because we've talked about it. How many, we said, is 52% of homeowners currently or have 50% or more equity. And I think 32% own their homes outright. So if the aging in place continues to happen from now for the next 10 to 15 years, that 32% is going to increase. And we may have an opportunity where when they do leave it to them, they're leaving them a debt-free house.
Yeah, but if they do a reverse mortgage, right?
Correct. Yes.
So
Depending on
if
what their
they,
needs
if they
are,
tap out all their equity,
Yes.
they'll be on the market.
Well, that's a great point. We were talking about your grandma earlier, right?
or they leave it alone either way. I don't know.
Well, no, but that's a good point because, if you look at assisted living, that in and of itself could be a whole other episode where we don't have enough elderly assisted living facilities in the United States to handle this influx over the next 10 to 15
boomers,
years, right?
What's the number on each generation.
Like, what do you mean?
Boomers and millennials are the biggest, right?
As far as, yes,
Millennials.
millennials are 75 million, boomers are like 68.
Yeah, and that's why we don't hear about the Gen Xers, because there's only like 5 of them.
Well, and you have two different forces happening. But my point on when we talk about reverse mortgages or HELOCs or something, if I own my house outright and I'm 65, 70 years old, right, and over the next 10 years, I have to move into an assisted living. Because we don't have enough assisted living facilities, it's just like the housing market, supply and demand. I mean, have you guys looked at how much per month assisted active adult communities are?
Well, but that's what I mean. That's why we're already seeing a growth, unprecedented, in at-home care.
Right.
Because of that.
But
fact.
at-home care is also extremely expensive. So my point is, and to back up what Oscar's saying is, there's going to be an interesting dynamic where do the houses that are getting left to like the Gen Zers, for example, if that's an opportunity, are they debt-free because they're paid off? Or did they have to take out reverse mortgages, cash out refis, HELOCs to then pay to be in at-home care that's costing $5,000-$6,000 a month? Because we also know that the majority of Americans, we talk about it all the time, right? Less than $1,000 in savings, maybe $1,500 in savings. That includes baby boomers. A lot of their equity is tied up in their home. But if once they retire, and now all of a sudden they have to go to an assisted living because they have a 2-story house and they don't want to age into a single-family ranch or something like that. If they don't have enough money, where they don't have their 401ks, they've got equity in their home.
What was it like Greek culture or Viking culture? It was like once they got to a certain age, they would be like, hey, go jump off that mountain.
Yep.
You're a burden.
Yep.
Go.
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy to think about, though. I mean, you don't know, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think those stats, they're going to be interesting. I think the Gen Z will definitely have a crazy market, but I think the millennials and Gen Xers are the ones that are going to manage that market with the whatever trusts or, if they inherit the homes, they're the ones that are going to deal with it. So they're the ones that are going to decide what they're going to do with them. But the Gen Zers are definitely going to take advantage of what's going to happen in that market.
And let's go back to 3 episodes ago, where Gen Z middle schoolers are already talking about how to fix the housing market. So
they're not even going to buy these houses. They're going to go dig a mound and put solar.
You literally have an entire generation that watch housing struggle. So are they going to be like, yeah, housing? Or are they going to already have created and have the systems in place to be like, nah,
And a lot of that's going to be personality too, because at home, my 2 little ones, my 5-year-old, community all day. He'll do community living and love it. My little girl, oh, don't touch her shit. She will cut you.
And here's when we talk about housing inventory, right? So Zillow has done a study. Granted, we don't take Zillow by gospel, but they do have a lot of data. Their estimation, and this is where this comes from. So right now, 79% of baby boomers own their homes that they lived in, compared to 52% of millennials and 26% of adult Gen Zers. Okay.
I love how they just skip over the Xers.
Well, because the Xers, I think, are just tied into the millennials. I think that's what's happening.
Yeah.
Or baby boomers. They're that weird in between because they came out in 1965, right? But then they hit that, because another interesting fact, you guys think affordability is bad now. Technically, if you take into account average wage, average home price, and interest rate and average mortgage payment, it was actually more expensive to purchase a home in the 1980s than it is today.
1980s, I believe, the interest
the most
rate was
expensive,
like
18%.
I
The most expensive time
I can't wait for you to put that soundbite on social media.
It's the most. It is the most expensive time in U.S. history so far to have purchased a home was in the 1980s.
It was a weird jump, the 80s into the 90s.
Correct. It was a weird jump, but
elder millennial here, you saw a lot of that with the auto and housing market.
Yeah. But that being said, right? So I think that's why they're not mentioned as much, because they're in that transitionary period. But Zillow is estimating that more than a quarter of the nation's owner-occupied homes, which is about 20 million units, would hit the market over the following 2 decades as a result of boomers aging. And that cycle is expected to peak around 2030. So in 6 years. So for all of you that are like, when is housing absolutely become more affordable? If this holds true and they do age out of their homes and they come back into the market, 2030 is probably going to be where we see home prices take a pretty significant dip based on the ability we actually have supply.
So according to the data, one of the biggest generations are dying off, depending on how. I mean, it's not going to happen overnight, right? It's not going to,
they
all
call
of a
it
sudden,
a
they're
silver
all dead.
tsunami or a silver glacier, depending on
Right.
who you talk to.
And as they go, I think the market will start shifting throughout that process. But the second biggest, which is the millennials, I think they're gonna. Again, I'm very jaded. No, I don't want to say jaded. I'm tenured into the system. It's. I hate people that say that they know what they're going to forecast and do, right? I just do. When it comes, not Zillow, because, again, they have a ton of data, but just your average agent is like, oh, yeah, this is definitely going to happen. You never know. If there's one thing that I'm certain is uncertainty in the market. So it'd be interesting to watch and see what the biggest generational group does and will happen, and it skips one generation, and then the second biggest influences the market. I don't know what's going to happen because I am of the elder millennials. I am very different from the younger millennials. We have a lot of similar traits, but the way we do things are very different. And then the Gen Zers are just off the rocker, right? So who knows what's going to happen with the market back then or when that happens. And we have the financial sector. What's that going to do?
We do, and we
then-
also have declining birth rates, which not a lot of people talk about. Right?
And-
So when you have those Gen Zers and the Gen Alphas, like instead of having the two kids with the house and a picket fence, it may be one kid. It may be more people opting for no kids because of the expenses and inflation,
The Henrys.
cost of living.
The
You've also
dinks.
got
The Henrys and the Dinks.
You've
the
also
high
got-
earners not yet ready,
Yep.
and the dual income.
You've
no
also got
kids.
the issue of immigration, right? If
Well,
we
and that's what
continue
I was
to
gonna
tighten
say.
immigration, legal immigration or not,
And
you're
let's
gonna
see
have
how
less
the government
influx.
sticks its foot in here.
Right.
Because they always do.
Yeah, there's going to be, I mean, like I said, there's going to be a lot. If you look at this on a macro scale, there's a lot of large events that are happening over an extended period of time that we don't know. I don't think that the baby boomers dying off are going to solve the housing market because if it does take a long time, for the most part, markets will adjust, right? And if all of a sudden you start to see housing prices decline, people like us may look at it and go, okay, well, I can't make money off my house selling it, so I'm just going to turn it into a rental. If I turn it into a rental, I'm not adding anything to the inventory. I'm just going to buy another house, renting out this house because my home lost 20% of its value.
Correct.
So there's a lot of different things. Like if it was an overnight thing and all of a sudden 20 million homes got dumped into the market, yes, you would start to see, I mean, shit would go wild.
Right.
But if it's this slow roll, the market's going to have time to adjust. And it gives, like you said, time for other shit
Well,
to
I
happen.
mean, here's another perfect example, right? Like, as far as how fast it's going to happen,
Mm-hmm.
we just went through the pandemic, which
I was just gonna say
most
that.
of the people who passed were older folks who had homes, and it didn't really help very much, like it. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see.
And they're just gonna get older. And
Mm-hmm.
statistically, how often does a pandemic happen?
Yep.
I believe every 10 years.
Something like that.
I mean,
Sorry.
not to
It's
the
literally
extent
a
that we,
sentence
not
in
to
the
the
next
extent,
article.
not to the extent that what happened now, but we did have a pandemic, but it didn't go the way it went this time around. But we had the bird flu, we had the swine flu. Those were pandemics. but-
H1N1.
Yeah, but we
I think that was bird flu,
we nipped
right?
it in the
No.
bud when we needed to. This one just got a little out of hand, and whatever conspiracy theory or non-conspiracy or whatever you want to believe, that's not what I'm getting into. But pandemics happen at least every 10 to 20 years. There's a lot involved in real estate, believe it or not.
Well, yeah. I mean, you look at the job market, right? One of the reasons that the housing market has remained so resilient when everybody was calling for it to crash coming out of COVID is because the entire, I don't want to butcher this stat, but in 2023, I want to say the U.S. net gain in jobs was like 2.7 million jobs gained in 2023, which nobody saw happening. The reason it happened was because there was a lot of recapture of jobs that were lost during COVID and the shutdown. But for whatever reason, people weren't forecasting that. And that has led to the Fed continuing to keep rates high. But it's also led because anytime people have jobs, they have income, they can buy houses. We don't have inventory. So home prices have stayed elevated as well when everybody thought they were going to drop 30, 40%. In certain markets they have, right? Austin, Texas being one of them. Arizona has taken a pretty big hit. But places like California, Colorado, Idaho, Seattle, it has not gone. I mean, we're up 43% since 2020. Now, over the last 2 years, we're down 6.5%. So we're still up 30-some% aggregate. Is because things like a black swan event like COVID happens, But then, all these people lose their jobs. But I mean, the unemployment rate right now is 3.7% because you're still recapturing all of those jobs. It shows that the economy is doing well. It's keeping inflation elevated, but it's keeping money in people's pockets. So yeah, I mean, there's so many different factors that affect a commodity, especially something that every human being needs, which is shelter. So
on top of being a walking thesaurus, you got to not use references like Black Swan, because I was following you and I had a lot to say and I just lost it all because once you said Black Swan, my mind went that way and then I lost everything. And
great movie
I
about
had
a dancer
really
with
good to say,
schizophrenia.
and I lost it with all the stats and
ADHD,
references.
everybody.
Yeah, and I haven't had breakfast, and this is starting to kick
All right.
in.
Well,
No, but-
article number 2, and if you remember, we can come
okay,
back.
fair enough.
All right.
Because it was relevant.
Well, then
It
go.
was.
Do you remember it? You just said
I
you
don't.
lost it.
I
Okay.
don't.
All
But
right.
it was
Just
relevant.
Keep thinking.
Okay.
It might, because these kind of tie into each other, right? And this is going to piss a lot of people off, especially the people in our TikTok comments. Housing market outlook. Top forecaster says home prices to climb 7% in 2024.
Decline 7%.
Prices to climb
Oh, to climb.
7% in 2024.
I pulled our stats in January just to see where we were, and we were up 1%. And I posted it in a down market. We were up 1%.
It only makes sense though.
I'm
Sorry.
not surprised that they're forecasting that because
Yeah.
we've become a seasonal market again. I know I say that a lot. In a quote unquote normal seasonal market, we increase year over end 3 to 7% depending on area, right? So that means it's going to be maybe a healthy market, but
I mean,
again,
this is,
I don't.
we've been saying this.
We don't need
legitimately.
it, and I'm a homeowner.
Yeah.
We don't need that increase. We need a decrease a little bit more just to
What
catch
I'm
up with a
saying
lot of
is
other
that
stuff.
We've been saying this. It only makes sense. The last 3 years, prices are elevated. People are sitting back and waiting, and now we finally got the goose egg. Rates are coming down. When rates go down, prices go up because more people compete. It's just how it happens.
And I don't know. I want to say I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to lean towards the lower end of that 7%.
So again,
because
this
of
is
the
a
rental market.
This is a clickbait article because when you actually look at it, his prediction is between 4 and 7%.
Okay.
They just went ahead and said 7%. So that I clicked on the article so we can come talk about it with you guys.
I would think 4% would probably be a little better because
Yeah.
we were looking at another article and you said that rentals were going down. Whenever rentals go down, guess what? So do house prices, because people are going to they're going to say, you know what? If I'm going to buy a house, I'm going to pay X amount of money, but if I go rent for another year or two, maybe save a little bit more money, you have a lot of those people. So I think our increase isn't going to be as much, but I do know that we're not in a decline because we still were up 1% year over end in a declining market.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see 4%. California, well, not California, but Colorado, Texas, like states like that, you're going to see 7%. States like North Carolina, states like Wyoming, Kansas.
The Rust Belt. I think
Yeah.
you're going to see a big gain in the Rust Belt.
Yeah.
Ohio,
Well,
Iowa,
and again,
Illinois,
I remember what I was going to say.
Kentucky,
That tied into the
Eastern
other
Pennsylvania.
the other article is I always say what type of buyer or seller needs to buy or sell.
Right.
Unfortunately, we'll start with the worst one: death. There's a death, you got to sell the property, whatever the case may be. There's a divorce, another bad one. Well, now you got to sell, but then there's a buy. So those are things that always you have to buy or sell. And then there's marriage, the happy one. There's marriage. There's kids. There's a few others.
Downsizing. So empty nesters.
Yeah, empty nesters. So there's those things that are going to influence the market regardless of what the market does. You have to. But when there's a low interest rate, I'm moving because I want to.
Correct.
And that's what happened during the pandemic. Unfortunately, that's what drove all the prices up. People were like, I want to move. I can, it's damn near free money, 2% interest rate. Let's go.
Well, let's talk about, again, these weird factors that influence what we might see, right? So you said it's death, divorce, birth, marriage, and then
Empty nesters.
And empty nesters, right? Well, if you look at
The bounce back kids, though, wait.
if you look at empty nesters, right? That's not necessarily a thing anymore because, and I can look it up.
Rebound kids, I think
But
they call
you've
them.
got there is a historically high percentage of college graduates and millennials that are living back at home with their parents, which are now forcing some of these baby boomers that would have normally downsized at this point to keep the size of the house for two reasons.
Interesting
One,
stat.
right? One,
that is.
it lowers the mortgage, right, for both parties. It's cheaper for millennials, so they can do it. But now you can't downsize because you got your 27-year-old kid and his girlfriend living in your basement for the next 5 years until it's affordable.
Well, I was gonna say, and what are those kids doing during those 5 years?
Calling it the basement suite.
Hopefully stacking.
Maybe. But a lot of them aren't stacking because they're wanting to do, or what was it called? When they travel and I forget what it's called, but they're seeing the world, right?
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about housing. I don't want to worry about that right now.
So it's on like a sabbatical.
Yeah, they're gonna go Romspringer if you're Amish. No, but so with that said, yes,
got it.
That's an interesting.
So here's the stat. Ready for this shit?
Let's go.
This is fucking wild. Now again, you can get polls from anywhere. This is from Harris poll for Bloomberg, right? 45% of people ages 18 to 29 are living at home with their families, which is the highest figure since 1940. More than 60% of Gen Zers and millennials reported moving back home in the past 2 years, often because of financial challenges. So you're talking 45% of potential home buyers are living back at home.
That's insane.
That's
and
massive.
saving money.
Right?
And I would like to know what if you break it down to ethnicity.
Yeah.
Because
I'm sure
Hispanics
from,
are. So for the longest time, bless her heart, my grandmother on my dad's side of the family, she would flip out when I would tell her that I lived alone. And I lived by myself for the longest time. It was just me. I loved it. I set some down. It's always going to be there. I lived alone. I learned. I like to cook. I would love to say that I cook well. So I learned to cook. I enjoyed being alone, and it would freak her out. Who cooks for you? Me.
Right.
Who does your laundry? I do. It flipped her out because her generation and her kids, my uncles didn't move out until they were married. Mm-hmm. My dad either. Like she wouldn't allow them. No, you don't. No. You stay here. Let me take care of you.
No, mijito, no.
No. I'm gonna take care of you. And she would come across me and like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm living my best life.
Well, and here's we've used the stat a couple of different times because again, at the end of the day, people overcomplicate this housing inventory. And I'm responding to comments still about investors buying homes and so on and so forth. Here's the fact of the matter is home ownership by primary residences is 66%. It's been that way. It's actually a little higher than it was prior to the pandemic. But 66% of homes in the United States are owned by primary homeowners, right? We know now that for every 1% that interest rates drop, 5 million buyers get unlocked. Currently in the United States, there's about 1.6 million homes listed for sale. So 1.6 million homes listed for sale. If interest rates drop by 1%, 5 million potential home buyers, including those that are living at home with their parents, that are high income renters, that are dinks, right? Dual income, no kids. 5 million people potentially. Now let's say let's go on the high end, right? Let's say every single one of these people is a couple. So it's 5 million people, 2.5 million households that can now buy. I have 2.5 million people that want to buy 1.5 million homes, right? I've got 8 people that want to buy 2 apples. What can I charge for those apples? Whatever anybody wants to pay, right? So when Oscar says that 4 to 7% is looking highly likely, we already know that the Fed has said, hey, we're going to try and cut the fund rate 3 times, which means the interest rates have a chance of going down even farther.
While also providing more funding for first-time home buyers.
I just brought that article up.
Yes.
And for ADUs and all that other stuff. So they're...
Yes. So yes, there will be pockets that this is not
true.
They're
mixing the cauldron.
Yeah, there'll be pockets that this is not true, but by and large,
It's fucking crazy.
5 million buyers get unlocked, and again, I'm saying that every single person has a boyfriend, girlfriend, married, right? Which, if you guys are single, that's hard to do, right? Well, let's say it's 100% success rate. So 2.5 million people are going to want to buy 1.5 million currently listed homes spread across the United States. The math doesn't math. Like prices will remain elevated and it will get worse the lower interest rates are because we don't have the inventory.
It's just so wild.
Now we're talking about a lot of stats. And just to blow your mind, it's not just one thing that dictates the real estate market. But at the end of the day, it doesn't have to be that complicated, right? You buy when you're ready. But understand that's why when you ask us at a party socially, so how's the market doing?
Right.
Really?
Yeah.
What part? Where should I start? And where are you in this? It's not a fair question to an agent to say, how's the market doing? What do you think it's going to do?
Right.
You just said a mouthful of a fraction of what the market can or will not do. Now, as the experts...
Well, we're taking it all the way to baby boomers dying
Yeah.
and a forgotten generation.
How far do you want to go
right?
down this rabbit hole?
Yes, exactly.
You know? So please don't think we don't want to have the conversation. Instead, what do you want and what are you looking for?
Yes.
Is a better question.
Correct.
For us to ask you, but understand that's why it's a tough... If you run into that agent, it's like, oh, the market's going to do this. Bullshit. I'll call you out right now. Right. You don't know.
What's blowing my mind the most, did you say, 1.5 million for sale right now? Wasn't the average like 3 million?
Minimum.
3.5?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it, I think, last week. The Denver metro area used to average 15 to 20,000 new listings a week.
That's wild.
And this week we're at 809, right? But yes, I agree with Oscar. The question is not how is the market doing? If you're a consumer looking to buy or sell, the question should be, what can I do to be prepared to jump in, right? And from a buyer standpoint, the reason we give you these statistics like, hey, by the way, we're going to probably see home price appreciation is so that you guys can take that opportunity to go, I'm going to get my finances right. I'm going to put a team in place, whether it's a lender, a realtor, a title company, and a home inspector. I'm going to start putting money away at a certain amount per week to hit a 3.5% down payment. I'm going to do my due diligence on down payment assistance programs, on first-time homebuyer programs, on grants. I'm going to look at different geographical areas that I can live that are maybe a little bit outside where I would normally want to purchase. I'm going to drill down on my wants and needs on houses so that I don't feel like I'm missing out. If I'm a seller, I'm looking at this going, okay, so what you're telling me is if I list my house this year, right? Obviously, we want you to list your house because we do need inventory because we want it to be affordable for everybody. But as a seller, now you go, okay, well, maybe I can talk to my preferred realtor, whoever that is. If it's us, great. If it's somebody else, no big deal. Ask these questions. What are the best bang for my buck improvements I can make? Is staging worth it? How important is pricing? Should I price high? Should I price low? What is my market in my specific neighborhood doing? What's the demand look like? And now you can arm yourself going into Q2 and Q3 in order to make the most money possible when you sell your house. That's what the conversation should be. And that's we're just trying to give you context as to why we think certain things are going to happen in the market, and then you guys can make that decision based on what your specific plan is over the next 6 to 12 months.
To simplify what Jameson is saying, yes, what's the market doing is a great icebreaker. Instead, look, this is what I want to do. What are your thoughts? Is a better segue into having a good conversation with that agent. And if you're just in an awkward situation with an agent and that's what you say, it's probably not the agent you want to use because he's awkward as all hell and you don't want to spend, whatever time looking for houses with him or her. But I think if we could change the narrative of how's the market into, hey, this is what I'm thinking. What are your thoughts? Mm-hmm. I think that's a better conversation to have with your real estate agent.
Yeah. And I think, we've covered two pretty big topics today that have a wide range, and hopefully you guys understand that it's not black and white like a lot of people want it to be black and white. There's a lot of different factors and facets of the market that will affect different things. So I think this would probably be a good time to roll into a one rock takeaway and kind of summarize.
We didn't get into the third topic. I'm telling you, this is.
I know.
It's an encumbersome
the problem is if we do a third topic, we're going to be here for 3 hours, which we'd like it, but you guys are going to get bored. But every week, at the end of every episode, we do a one rock takeaway, and it's basically our thoughts to kind of summarize what we think the key points are that we want you guys to take away. So I don't know, Oscar, Charlie, if you want to start what your rock takeaways are.
Charlie?
I'm going to sit on it for a second.
Okay. I think my one rock takeaway for today is instead of your conversational piece being what's the market doing, because it's encumbersome. I mean, it's not a conversation that anybody's going to be sure of. And if you have an agent that's sure of it, I'm going to call bullshit. Instead, say, hey, this is what I want to do. What are your thoughts and what advice can you give me? I think that's a way better conversation to be had. And you don't want to hear a bunch of bullshit stats anyway. What is your situation and how can I improve that situation? Or what's your situation? How can I ask to improve my situation?
I like it. You still sitting on yours?
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to formulate it a
Nope,
little
you're
better.
good. You're good. I think my one rock takeaway is that there is a lot of noise around the housing market, whether it's a good time to buy, whether it's a good time to sell. Do we have an affordability issue? Do we have an inventory issue? And people tend to narrow it down to this black and white. If it's not this, then it's this. And I think that's a mistake that a lot of people make. But I understand it because not everybody is immersed in this market on a day-to-day basis, going out and showing houses, talking to clients, submitting offers, getting feedback from other agents, and all of that kind of stuff. I think we do a good job of taking it to another level, right, with this podcast on purpose because I'm a big context guy, and I will never give somebody an answer without the reasoning behind it. And whether or not you agree, obviously that's on you guys, right? Everybody can have their own opinion. But I think it's important to understand that when you're looking at, as a buyer or a seller, hey, is it the right time for me? It is 100% about your specific financial situation, familial situation, ownership situation, rental situation. Like, it will be different for every single person that we talk to. Don't rely on the black and white headlines. We've demonstrated it here, right? We started talking about home price valuation, and we got into how aging baby boomers are going to affect that, and then how the percentage of millennials living home with supposed empty nesters are going to affect that. And the plan is the more information you have and the more context you have, the better your decision is going to be when you do decide to make that leap, whether it's looking to purchase a house for the first time or the seventh time, or sell your house and upgrade, downsize, whatever you're looking to do.
That's a good point. I mean, we make it messy on purpose,
Yes.
just because there's a lot more involved. But your situation doesn't have to be that messy.
Right.
It could be very direct.
It's our job to
Right.
wade
It's
through
our
the
job
bullshit.
to make it messy so we can give the information so you see that there's more involved in it.
Yep.
I like that.
I'm gonna keep mine short and sweet, obviously because of my voice. But I think the key is preparation. Right now, whether you're a boomer, whether you're a millennial, Gen Z, doing your best to prepare for if you need at home or if you need an assisted living, doing your best to prepare for, am I going to inherit a house or do I have to buy a house? Or doing your best to prepare for, do I even want a house? I think preparing and knowing your options in this market is your best option.
And I'm
Agreed.
going to go ahead and say I love the Gen Xers. He left you out again.
We know you exist. We hear you.
I'm going to give you guys
We're
hearts.
with you.
Love me, the Gen Xers.
Gen X with a heart.
Yes.
All right, guys. I think this is going to be an interesting one. I'm actually curious. We're going to go into our rock rating. And for those of you guys new to the show, we do a rock rating on every single bourbon that we try. And it is on a scale of 0 to 10 rocks, 0 being the best, 10 being the worst. And that's mainly because
I didn't know we had a 0.
the bet.
I thought it was
Well, yeah.
1 to 10. That has to be a
Well,
phenomenal bourbon.
we haven't
for 0.
we haven't broken 0 yet.
We haven't even broken 1.
No, we got close. We got 2. But the premise is the more rocks you have to put in a glass of whiskey, usually the worse it is, the harder it is to drink. Less rocks, the better it is to enjoy. And this one is, I like that we had this on the heels of Broken Barrel, which
Well, and
last
again-
week's episode was a 115 proof, small batch single barrel, aged 5 years. So very, very similar. Completely different profile, though.
To the new followers and the non-bourbon drinkers, the rocks are not to make it cold. Ice is not to make the bourbon cold. Ice is to water down the bourbon, to open it up, and potentially make it better.
Make it more palatable.
palatable, if you will. If the burn's high, you add some water and or some rocks, right? So that's where we're going with that. Because right now, if you just want it cold, leave it outside. It's freaking cold here in Colorado.
I'm curious what you think.
Ooh. It opened up.
It did.
It did.
The sweetness,
The sweetness
my
came
first
through.
pour.
sweetness came through hard. But it is still the sweetness of the barrel, not like, it's not like not a syrup sweetness, but that caramel vanilla really punched through. The spice tailored down a little bit.
The burn's still there.
The burn is still there. Yep, absolutely.
I think I'm trying to wrap my thoughts around what you just said because I'm feeling the same way. It's not like an artificial flavor added just for flavor or the syrup, that kind of sweetness. It acquired this sweetness from somewhere, whether it's the alligator char or whatever the hell they're doing, but it is a sweetness that's incorporated and part of the body of the bourbon, not an afterthought of we're going to add this flavor to it.
Well, it had that
kinda weird.
long lingering spice,
Yes.
and that it still lingers, but now it's intertwined with its sweetness. Like
It kinda
it's more
meshed better.
enjoyable sitting
Yeah.
on the tongue now than it
Yeah.
was
Yes.
an hour ago.
Absolutely.
And Oscar, before we go through it, price point.
$61, I believe.
Okay.
So last week was 54.
And this is at a place that probably prices it
A little
on
high.
the higher echelon of price points. So
What-
you could probably find this probably 55 to 65.
I think what was really getting me with this one is last week they specifically took a barrel apart and put it in to get more of that wood flavor. But I feel like I'm getting more true wood in this with the number 4 char than I did with what they did last week. And I like that a lot.
And again, that's what I was. I
Yeah.
agree 100%. It's more of a incorporated flavor, a part of the bourbon than let's try to make this bourbon tasty.
Well, and think about it. That makes sense because we don't know what the char of the barrels were that Broken Barrel used. We just know the barrel type.
Yep.
Right.
And I know for a fact that if you're using a sherry cask,
It's
it is
gonna
not
be-
a charred barrel.
It's not gonna be alligator
Right?
char.
It's not gonna be. It's not alligator char. So I agree. I think that was more from the sweetness flavor profile.
Yeah.
This is more from that smoky oak.
What I
If
really
I may
like-
make a quick analogy, it's more of when you cook a really good steak, you want some salt, you want some pepper, and you're gonna get beef flavor. Now you can make a plethora of steaks, Oscar steak, you add blue cheese, whatever the hell, it's gonna be good, right? I think this is more of this is how we make it. The flavor, I think the flavors are gonna be consistent, even though they use different age barrels. I'd be interested.
They're all
to see-
char. They're all number 4 char though.
Yeah,
So
and
you're
I'd
right.
be interested
Yeah.
to see if they all taste the same. I think across the board, this would probably taste the same and consistent no matter what.
Agreed.
I think what's cool to me is, last week we compared it to, or I compared it to Prohibition, the old Forester. In my head, and this isn't like quality, but level of sweetness and palate, it goes this Wild Turkey, then the Broken Barrel, then the Prohibition when it comes to sweetness. Like, I really like this one. I don't even want to call it complex. I want to call it well blended.
Yeah.
Like it's not like the flavor evolves.
They didn't
But-
try and do too much.
Yeah.
But you get all the flavors.
Right.
So like for me, sipping wise, putting this up against the Broken Barrel, I would go with this over Broken Barrel because I just think that this is so much more well rounded as a bourbon.
I mean, category wise, I think this is up there with like an Eagle Rare and a Buffalo Trace. Every bottle, you know where you're gonna get.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is what it is.
Yeah.
As far as category, as far as
Like
where
we
I
gotta
rate
put
it-
this on the back burner for who else uses a number 4 char barrel.
Right.
I would
Yes.
love to compare
Yes,
this
me too.
to another number 4 char.
Yep.
Just because this is not, for me, at 115 proof, yeah, the burn's there, but again, it plays into the flavor so well that, yeah, I mean, as far as rock rating, numbers go, I think I gave the Broken Barrel a 3.2.
Something like that. Yeah.
3.2. If that's where the Broken Barrel sits, for me personally, I'm going to put this 2.8. Yeah.
it was I was curious just because I've had their good stuff, how this one was going to play out, and I think it holds its own for what it is. It's strong, like
Yeah.
it holds its base of what it is, and hey, this is
But like when I think bourbon,
yeah,
this is like prime example for me.
and it's even on the sweeter side of what I would say is
Yeah,
my
it's a little
wheelhouse.
sweeter, yeah.
It is sweeter,
Yeah.
but it's not a sweet that was an afterthought. It was a sweet of it's just going to happen because this is how we do it.
Yep.
And it was interesting. I am having issues rating it because of that. I'm gonna go for it, Jameson. I got to think about this because for what it is, I can respect this bottle.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this is the word I would use to describe this bourbon not flavor wise, just like what it is unapologetic.
100%.
Like it just knows what it is. It goes old school. They don't use water to distill it. They do a number 4 char, which I don't think a lot of bourbons do.
It's risky.
Scary. Yeah.
Right? It is. It's scary. You know what you're going to get. They age it for at least 5 years. So they know. Like this is what it is. So I do like that. This reminds me of, not to steal the name of another bourbon that we've had, but like this is like a tin cup bourbon.
Yeah.
Like around a campfire,
Yeah.
pour it in there, and you got an
Like I
experience from when you start to finish.
I'm gonna have a good conversation with a decent bourbon.
Yeah,
Go chew the fat
yeah,
with
and
my friend.
I think this is one of those bourbons that if you're a beginner drinker of bourbon, you're not gonna like.
Yeah.
You won't.
I
You won't.
respect that.
It'll be in an old fashioned. I'd be curious with a couple drops of water. It would open it up even more. I think, especially from the sweetness standpoint. But I'm going to agree with Charlie. I put this up high. I put this better than barely, but I put it better than Broken Barrel. And I think for the same reason. Like I think there's 2 different ways to do it. Right. Not a lot of people use number 4 char. And not a lot of people break barrels and put them in to age for 4 years, right? So,
Interesting.
am I going to change my
Well,
mind?
no. So I'm passing around the JC's glass, and JC's glass is more similar to a highball.
Yeah,
We'd start at the beginning. I'd
Right.
be interested to see.
To me, it opened up from floral bouquet to kind of like a sweet perfume. It's kind of weird.
Not only that, I expected
the burn's gone.
I expected the burn to be a little bit more gone.
Yeah, I
With
mean, it's
JC's
still there.
glass. It's still there with
But
that.
it's like a, if I could compare it to anything, I don't know. Back in the day, I used to slick my hair back and
Yeah.
put some hairspray in it. Have you ever inhaled through your nose that hairspray? That's
Yeah.
kind of the burn. It's
Yeah.
not like a, oh my God, but ooh, it singes the hairs.
Yeah, yeah.
For the non-visual, Jameson is taking sips of
Double fisting.
He's double fisting. He's taking a sip of what we would pour for JC.
Dude, those almond honey notes come through way
Yeah.
more
Opened
on
up.
this one.
Yep,
But it still has that char taste, which I really like.
yep.
Oh,
I think
man. What do we, you did a 3-2 for,
for Broken,
what do we do for Prohibition?
I did a 2.5 for Prohibition.
I did. I don't know what I did. I think I had 2.5.
2.5, right?
I think
Yeah.
so.
I don't taste it.
I love it.
I think it's closer to a 2.5 now.
I love it because, like, you can tell.
And again, this is the vessel we were talking about. It's
Right.
probably drink better
Yeah.
out of.
Yes, I think
And
this closer for me. It's closer to a 2.5.
It's the thing that gets me about it is the fact that it's a 5, 8, and 12-year combination with a number 4 char. This is exactly what I would expect. 116 proof, cast strength, punch you in the face with the ethanol, with the burn. Then
Yeah, but
as it tailors off,
sip that.
Well, this is what I'm going to say. As it tailors off, you get the oak of the char, but then because you have such a variation of age, the sweetness is prominent.
Yeah,
like,
so it goes from punching in the face to slightly caressing your beard.
And it goes from
Lovingly.
I think the neck pour to our
Yeah.
initial pours. There was like a quick sour mash
Yep.
hit you.
Yep.
It was sour bitter. Now it's more of a sweet tart.
Honest to God, what I would say is, after trying 3 now in a row, if you are going to have 115 proof, do not sip that bourbon within 10 minutes after you pour it.
Open it up.
Or
That's it.
open
Let
it
it
and
open.
leave the bottle
And
open
leave it
a
open.
little bit. Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's
absolutely.
my rule. If you ever
Yeah.
come drinking at my house,
Or you know what? I mean, it breaks the rules, but like put it in a decanter
Yes.
so where it
Yeah.
can air out a little bit.
Yeah.
But I'll give mine right now. I'm at a 2.7. I'm
I-
right there with
If
Prohibition.
you ever come drinking in my house, we pop open a bottle. I keep the cork off till we're done.
Yep.
That's just
2.7.
Yep. Yeah.
That's it. 2.7.
Fantastic. 2.7, 2.8. And where are you sitting, Oscar?
I'm sitting at a 3.
Okay.
I also think this is almost $20 cheaper than Prohibition. No?
Yep. It
Yeah.
is cheaper. I just like it a little more toned down on the floral and sweetness.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's definitely a solid
it.
3.
2.7, 2.8, and a 3.
It won't rattle from 3.
Yep.
I like it.
And I think this is, like you said, unapologetic.
Yep.
I am who I am. You're gonna like me or not.
Yep.
Yep.
The
Awesome,
bottle
guys.
sucks for pouring.
Yeah, the bottle's horrible for pouring. They gotta fix that.
The
Put a
juice
little lip
inside
on
is
there.
great.
Goddamn. Well, thank you guys for sticking through with us. I know it was a little bit more of a complicated topic, but I also think it's important to discuss. And thanks, Oscar, for the bourbon. Fantastic choice. Again, we've had
Awesome.
a week of 3 weeks in a row of just
Some good stuff.
fucking
Wild
bangers.
turkey, you redeemed
Bangers,
yourself.
baby. Bangers.
redeemed
That's what
yourself.
I was gonna ask. Is this
Yeah.
better than?
Oh, yeah,
Matthew
100%.
McConaughey stuff?
100%.
Way better.
Yeah, 100%. So
Sorry,
bangers.
Matthew.
Oh, yeah.
I love you, but-
So before we wrap up, guys, like I said, if you're watching us on YouTube, if you're listening to us on a podcast channel, give us a like, give us a comment, give us a rating. We want to hear what you guys think about all this because I know it's complicated. Posted a video on our TikTok page, The Mile High Perspective, that's gotten a ton of views. Keep them coming. You can find us on YouTube at The Mile High Perspective, Living in Colorado, or Living in Colorado, The Mile High Perspective. If you guys want to email us, it's resotr at themilehighperspective.com. And then if you want to give us a phone call, shoot us a text message, 303-578-0263. That goes to all of our phones. We're happy to answer any questions for you guys. As far as social media, obviously, we're all on there. Oscar, where can they find you?
OscarTheRealtor.com, Oscar the Realtor CO, across the board. And again, we had one of our TikToks that there was tons of comments.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe
We're
we
like
can't-
60,000 views
Yeah,
or something ridiculous.
we may not be able to get to every one of them, but we love that. Keep them coming.
Yep. It's also fun watching you guys argue with each other in the comments. It's entertainment.
You can find me at That Lifting Agent or The Lifting Agent, Instagram, TikTok.
And then
Or your local urgent care.
Yeah.
local-
Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
And you can find me guys at the Colorado Real Estate Guy, basically Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. It's Jameson Amros if you guys want to connect with me there. But thank you guys again for tuning in. We will be back next week, hopefully with banger number 4 as far as the bourbon
That'd
goes.
be nice.
And yeah, if you guys have any questions, reach out. But cheers, boys.
Cheers.
Cheers.